Okay, story so far here in War and Peace, and yes, I'm still sick. I'm just coming up from the end of the last video, but I hope to be in better shape when I start playing again. The story so far, the French have pushed in and are doing quite well in Spain, but took a big risk in doing so, and they're paying the price. Poland's been destroyed permanently. All of the European powers are moving against them at once. My battery's running out, so I'm going to stop right there. But, yeah, I mean, this is, I think, the way that you take Spain out, though, is that you move against them in such an early state. Oddly enough, it's like an hour and a half after the last video. No, I still don't sound perfect, but it feels like it's all broken. Felt like it before I ate, but I had myself some chili mac. And yeah, I mean, I feel about how I felt, say, 2 weeks ago before I got, really sick or whatever, whenever it was. All right, so here we are in May. I'm assuming weather's good in May, no matter what. That's the tactical matrix. No matter what. All right. That's possible. It's all good. It was possible that the eastern map could be wet again for another turn. I don't even know if I paid attention to it last turn. I know I was aware of it at one point, but then when I actually moved the few Russian units on that map, I think I moved them at full movement point, so whatever. Are there any neutrals left? I don't believe so. Everybody's at war now, which means we get to play with the pro-French navies. I'm not sure that Poland is destroyed permanently. I can't find, like, something in my head says they are, but I can't find the reference. Under creation, it doesn't say it only happens once. And under how states are conquered, the only thing that's special about them is the following French satellites are never removed from the map board, even if an anti-French state conquers their home country: Italy, Poland, Portugal, and Spain. So I think I can reestablish them, maybe. I'm not sure. What's weird is that Treaty of Tilsit might impact this. But I don't see anything that seems like I don't have the creation section in this rulebook, and I don't see anything that particularly deals with Poland here. I guess I could look in the new rules, but somehow I thought that this was something that was a question that was in the old rules, to be honest, as well. Like, nothing of interest happens in the naval phase. The French pull away, they're unable to do any damage, and they weren't able to get any breakouts here. Mission roll, unless I have a huge force somewhere that I don't think I have, they should be fine. Although we do have some sieges but I think those are just one strength point, so they're not subject to attrition. In my illness, I must have fucked up, because something like this probably has a decent sized force in it. Could have got an automatic destruction on those units instead of besieging them. So I'm not quite sure. Most of them I got lucky in, like I took a couple of them. Brain not as healthy as I thought it was. The rest of me feels okay, but brain's still getting foggy. Advance on Spain. Asian is moving up to take Corona. This little southern slice down here is my hard part right now. Mainly because I can't maintain this supply line. Victor's going to try to. I don't really heavily outnumber La Romana, but I don't think it's a big deal. Napoleon's going to be able to demolish this stuff. He's got Davout on his side here. And it has to be a field battle because I fucked up with the Spaniards and left one too many troops in there. Well, wait a minute. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I think there's only 6, and that's allowable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nah, 6. Yeah, 6 is fine. So that's going to be taken as a siege, probably. I don't want to assault it. I don't have that many French there. But once I take that, I can turn, and really, there's nothing stopping me from taking the south of France. The only problem, of course, is I still have all this stuff in the Eastern European theater, and that is not going well for the French. And they don't have all their leaders up there. All their leaders are in Spain for the most part. We'll do what we can. I'm going to come back and deal with that because, again, my brain isn't quite good enough to handle what's going on. Production was normal production. And I focused with the French on building up at Strasbourg to try to hold a barrier. Because what I don't want to have happen is for France to fall while I've got everybody in Spain. Anything short of that, I can probably turn around. Well, that might be hard to justify as miners begin, we start seeing Cossacks coming out of here or something. I don't know. The thing is, it seems like there's a much lower turnaround time. I spent about 15 minutes or whatever watching a video, and now I'm ready, I think, to start moving the European stuff. I'm gonna do it. And a bunch of demoralized forces here, Marat joined them. I'm gonna entrench them. It's not a huge bonus, but I don't remember if it's, is it a -2? I don't have it here. I don't remember if it was a -1 or a -2. Fuck. And of course, this doesn't give me any more. Fuck. Either way, it's not something I particularly want to face. For the most part, the French in Europe are just falling back. The one exception up here, I think that's Soule up there. He dispatched Ney to get these troops, trying to run some additional forces up to the front as quickly as possible. Messina falling back from the Russians. It's not pretty, but it's buying me time. The only thing of importance is we ended up taking Brunswick. That's enough to destroy Brunswick, but also to create Westphalia, creating a Germanic center able to hit towards the Prussian forces. Is it a huge deal? No, but that's going to put us to the Allied turn. And I'll put the Brits there because I got to remember to do their navies. I can't just plow through the turn. But I got pretty far. And I'm still feeling okay. It's just, I know I can't plow through. Because, my life for a long time now has been this sort of twilight where I do very little. And in a way, just being sick has been an intensification of that, which I expect at some point or another, it's going to degrade to that level across the line where I'm just sort of stupefiedly, stupidly doesn't sound right. And stupefied, it has to be an adverb here, sitting in front of my computer just clicking and watching videos or whatever, which is very much what's been happening, or else lying down and just listening to them. Anyway, I don't know, but it's not a pleasing concept, and it's part of why I want things to hurry up and end before I get to that bad a place. Anyhow, here we are on the Allied turn, time to play with boats, see what I can do. I've got some weird shit where, I'm blockading stuff that there's nothing in it. Lorient, this kind of thing keeps happening. I realize as I did not check for the end of the American War last turn. Let me do a quick check now. It's not likely. I'll do another one this turn. But this is really tying me down. That's all my transports out there, and I don't ever get any more, even though there are more in the countermeasure. Too exciting happened in the naval phase. Shifted a boat out there, or whatever. But I got a bad attrition roll that caused some pretty heavy losses, especially on the Russians, who have fairly large sets of forces and aren't able to get their sort of home country bonus no matter where they are, because there's always a Russia penalty if you're in Russia, which cancels that out. So a 5 actually meant I lost a decent amount of cav over there. And I'm also still losing a different kind of attrition, which is the backs of these counters from the old set of counters. I don't know why. The fronts stay on perfectly fine. The backs have these little white paper things on the backing that isn't, as well. I don't know. It's almost like it was glued on, separate from the rest of the process. And I don't know. They've separated really, really horribly. I haven't had this happen with any other Avalon Hill games I can think of. Right off the bat. It's possible there are others, but this one is the one I remember the most of it happening. And it's just, so I have a lot of counters that look like this and then ones that look like this. I'm glad the fronts aren't falling off. Would make this version unplayable. But yeah, those seem to be better bonded somehow. That'll put me to production. We're in the same place. The Brits are down in the 20s. They're gaining ground on their on the commerce situation, but not well enough that they can do anything yet. And it looks like we're going to have normal production there. I actually think I probably had to do the alliance before that. Yeah, alliance comes before production, which is important because this is when I make that check for the Brits to come back. And I saw 6, thought it might be. All right, still trying to parse my actions sort of sectionally over here on the Spanish front. While Roman has fallen back, he's no longer got these guys demoralized. I'm making another attempt here to cut their supply line. It's already cut, but I could bring a lot more out of supply, cause more issues. The big problem is I only get 10 points a turn now, which can only buy me 1 partisan. So I can only hit 1 place. And it would take hitting this in like 3 places to break this line. But maybe not all of it. Like I could break this line a little more easily. That might be worth it. Let me see. 1, 2, 3 goes to there. That doesn't get me back up there. So actually, if I launch my attack down this way, this does me more good. Even though this would cost the French more, I'm looking to try to delay the conquest of Spain as long as I possibly can. I'm not sure entirely what happens when Spain falls under these new rules, but at the very least, it gives them a year's respite. It's weird because what it really should do is make Spain pro-French again, or something. Like, this is the fight for Joseph being king of Spain, not the fight for not these fights against these other established crowns. Now, yes, there is an established king in Spain, but essentially Napoleon's maximal goals in Spain were really the overthrow of Spain. Something which no other game allows either, so I mean, in a way you can kind of say it's fair. But most other games don't make it as easy to take Spain as this one does. All right, let's try to figure out what the Allies are doing there. The Russians are the most interesting. Well, the Russians are the least interesting, but the sort of the easiest to do, and they're sort of an unstoppable force. So I'm going to push them as far as I can go first, and then try to figure out what I can do with Prussia or Austria. They have a slight advantage, but that's it. For the Central European front, I already talked about Spain. Mack has moved up to Magdeburg. He's going to support Blücher in an attack against Soule and Hanover. He got numbers, but not quality. John, I don't know why he hadn't attacked Prague before, but he's doing it now. Russians trying to extend their supply line. They really can't get anywhere. Sending this guy back to get the Landwehr here. And Charles, he's sitting here. I don't know if I want to attack that trench. Let me put a marker there to consider it. He needs to be here or leave a troop here so that I can make the attack over on Munich. That was the key of all of that. I think this is a -2, and I probably don't want to hit that. I'll start resolving combat. The annoying situation, I used to house rule this to be different. First round of combat, Soule faced Blücher. 3-2 odds in Blücher's favor. It ended up at even though the French had better morale. They both have equal leadership. Blücher threw in a cav. Second round of combat looked like it was going to be the same thing, but there are now 3 regular French infantry, 3 minor French ally infantry, and 2 guard infantry there. And what that means is we end up going with the worst possible morale of any of the units there, which is the one. We end up taking a D2. That's not going to be good. We're going to have to fall out of there. That's not going to break Westphalia. I get to hold it as long as I hold Castle. Overalls, we managed to cut the supply here. Partisans did their job. I don't know what quest. I think I moved him properly. I don't think anything else fell of any importance. But the success here, we spread out so we don't take attrition. That demoralization means we're not guaranteed to be safe, but we're a lot more likely to be safe. And the French are probably going to fall back a little bit anyway. Does create some French losses, though, because the French were able to take everything on their minor infantry. So, like, the Danes took a loss, the Dutch took a loss. So now I've got, production coming from all of those. I guess the biggie, though, is the Bavaria fell. I'm going to have to hunt for the Bavarian troops, and that's going to cause another pile of Landwehr to be available for the Austrians to build. So I was able to find 4 Bavarian infantry. That seems small. One of them, they changed sides, is over here in Spain. Others switched over from Jerome to Hiller. That's fine. Those guys in Spain are just kind of annoying. I don't know how I'm going to get them back. They're not really cutting supply or anything, can't do much. And the French could overrun them if they want to, but that may be doing Austria a favor. I don't know. If we look at the initial setup, For satellites, we had 3 infantry and a cavalry. So there should be a Bavarian cav kicking around somewhere. But it's worse than that. Like, I got 4 Bavarian infantry. There should be 5 Bavarian infantry and a cav. So now I got to do the hunt and look and see if I can find those extra units again. Oh, some of them might be captured. Doesn't look like it. So I don't know where they are. It's a pain in the ass in this system. It really is. I wasn't able to find them, so I restored them into the dead force pool, or the French force pool, and put a number of Bavarians that I think makes up for that. I'm not sure. A number of landwehr at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's right. I don't know. It's, you know, a game of errors when it comes down to dealing with force pools to the level that this game does. It's just, it's not a fun situation to play with. I don't know what these are. Okay. Those are British units that can't be built. I can't think of anywhere else they could have ended up. I mean, I've looked through. Oh! I always forget the sieges. All right. Yeah, there's one. But there's a cav in here or something. Yeah, no, the cav isn't in existence. I can't find the cav. And there's only one Bavarian cav, and it was in the force pool. I don't know how it ended up in there. But at least one of those landwehr is going to come, and I'm going to get Olmütz back. It's just to the end of May. We move into June. Pretty sure weather's going to be good there. You can see things are not going well for the French in Europe. And it still may be a close run thing. It's like Spain is hard to take. I know I keep saying, oh, it's way too easy. Yeah, but it is way too easy maybe, but it's still, you know, even with this huge excursion into Spain and this effort into it that's weakening my chance here, I would be guaranteed to take Spain if it weren't for this coming in. But with that coming in, I have to devote all my resources this way that are coming in. That's not a problem. I have enough troops in Spain, I think. The problem is this may not hold. Paris and three French major cities or whatever their requirement to surrender may well fall. The partisans are keeping things interesting. Anyway, planning on doing is lying down for a bit, listening to a video or something, maybe napping a little. Now, one problem with that has been every time that I lay down, and I may be well enough now that this doesn't happen, but my lungs fill up. It kind of doesn't matter. I mean, it's worse when I'm on my back, so I've been lying kind of mostly on my kind of, I don't know, 3/4 stomach, 1/4 side, something like that, kind of propped that way. That works the best. But then I wake up and I'm in this huge coughing fit. And with how weak I was and everything, that coughing would throw me into okay, I can stagger up and I can sit and play a video game and watch some videos for a little while, and then I'm just so fatigued I have to go back to bed. And each time I go to bed, whatever rest I got was not working very well. Well, I think I'm well enough at this point where, that kind of coughing fit's not going to tax me too much and whatnot. But I don't know. Here we are on Wednesday. The improvement's not quite as good as I hoped. Apparently, I get a few hours where I'm kind of in pretty good shape, which is definitely better than it was. I went out and cut some tire, but my body is too fatigued to be able to really do that very well, so I didn't get very far on that. It's Wednesday afternoon. That makes it unlikely that I go shopping tomorrow. Although I might throw a backpack on and try to get a couple of emergency stuff I need if the illness reoccurs. Mainly cough syrup, some Zinger tea. I don't know what else. It's still the same walk, an hour and 15 minutes each way or whatever. But it's a lot easier without hauling a whole cart full of food. And although I'm running short on soup and chili and stuff like that, it's better than it was. Anyway, here in the game, we're in June. There's no weather check. It's all fair weather no matter what. I've already got it there. And I guess the Austrians start getting their landwehr this turn. And I guess that means I start moving the French boats around. It doesn't inflict any casualties or any damage to the economic status. And in fact, the English managed to sink another French ship. The situation's beginning to look very, very ugly. It's very hard for France to recover once they lose their naval supremacy. This global commerce rating has opened up another opportunity, though, and one that is a lot more powerful than I thought it would be. That should put us on attrition. Oh, that's going to definitely hurt. I mean, even in fair weather, that will hit. So they're French. So it's got to be in the 6 to 11 range, but there are a fair number of forces in that range, I think. It was merely normal for the French. They definitely could have used more points. If they had more points, I think I put half here and half up here to funnel into Spain, because I don't have an ingress, a leader up near Cologne to start pulling troops through, or Antwerp or anything like that. I don't want to focus on the Navy anymore. I did want to point out something kind of interesting. So I moved Bernadotte. He's leaving, the line of fucking annoying supply lines here, all of which are actually important. Although, so this draws from here, 1, 2, 3. This draws from here, 1, 2, can't go any further. Then here, 1, 2. This actually could be a little further forward, which would have allowed me to get to Valencia. But Bernadotte was here, so he dropped off and moved here. That gets Victor into command. Victor has 1 strength point. I was thinking I would overrun this, but I realized he's only got 1 strength point with him. But that was what I wanted to point out. Let's say I kill this thing. I can put it in Bavaria, Saxony, or the Austrian forest pool very shortly. Not sure I'm allowed to put it there yet, because they certainly don't have any right now. But I have to also keep track of how many there would possibly be there, so that the force pools don't overflow the limits that they should have or whatever. It's such a fucked up situation. And that was from the original game. Anyway, I'll try to restore what supply I can. I guess I moved to here. That puts this back into supply for whatever it's worth. And it did take hits. Even though it was a small force, out of supply on a 6 in Spain, it still takes hits. Actually, I don't think I have any leeway here. Moving Victor across to grab reinforcements or something. But it's to here, then 1, 2, 3 to here, 1, 2 to here, but I can't go further. I don't see any play. So this is as tight a supply line as it gets. Let's get back to further north in Spain. Oh boy. I think if Napoleon wants to just try to assault that shit. It's hard to remember what's out of supply and what's not. Yeah, I have those little reminder markers. They don't really help all that much. in part because I kind of forget to use them. Because supply lines get cut during an opposing turn or whatever. Messina was out of supply here, but the attrition table is such that I was on the 6 to 10 table. A 6 minus 1, which is where I would have been, gives me the same result as flat out. So it actually didn't affect things. But sometimes you have to double check when you're moving units. Oh wait, that would have been out of supply. It also affects the forced march chances. I've abandoned Breslau, fallen back as far as I can. The biggie here is I've gathered a bunch of forces here under Murat to try to attack Hiller. We'll see how that goes. We got this still going, but Eugene is up there ready to attack Corunna. Although I suffered potentially, well, in actuality, an out-of-supply loss due to attrition there, I've reestablished supply, so now I can attack and or besiege without any problems. Good stuff across the board for the French. Good stuff. That's it's an amber term. Yeah, good stuff and bad stuff. They can be used for or against you at the game master's will. Okay, over here, nothing too exciting in the south. But Napoleon took Badajoz, finally. Eugene quickly took Corunna. That drops us down to like 6 points. Enough to build a partisan or a militia. That's it. Gotta hold all this. And, you know, I mean, with Napoleon coming down. Like I said, Spain is takeable. Should I expend that much force? I don't know. But of more interest, this guy did not recover. It's like, Soule, yeah. Which is potentially problematic because if Prussians take Hanover, there's two things that can happen. The Brits can start building King's German Legion, and the Prussians also have the potential to build on Landwehr there, but the King's German Legion is definitely a better buy. But over here, Murat attacked Hiller here. It was 3-2 at even. Ended up a fairly reasonable combat, but it would have gone down to 2-1, or it would have gone up to 2-1. That didn't seem worth it, and the Hiller's having to expend cav to keep it the die rolls even. So he fell back. Jerome moves in, besieges it, and takes Bavaria back. So now Bavaria has swung hands again. Now I have to find some Austrian, obviously this one is going to go, but I have to find Austrian Landwehr, and I think that's probably the only one to make up for the force pool issue. Ain't the only one. There's like 6 strength points, and I could actually pull a Bavarian cav and throw it down here if I thought that was more effective for me, and I think it is, to replace that Landwehr there. That was an infantry before. Then it got demoted to Landwehr with a 0 morale, and now it's cav somehow. It's just the magic of how this system fucking works. Yeah, I have a lot more units in the Bavarian force pool, so I gotta find myself some Austrian Landwehr to replace those with. They appear to be in all kinds of weird places. Some of them I think came from Saxony, so I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to make shit up and probably just say that not all of them were really Bavarian Landwehr, but this, because I've got like a unit here, that was probably Bavarian. This one, I think I built with Saxony, but maybe not. And then Max here, but then I look at the Saxons and there's only 3 strength points of those total. So there's one that's unaccounted for. That's probably was this one. But I can give up whatever I like. Now, I don't want to give this one up because that one goes with Dresden. So that would be a really bad choice. So the rest of them are Bavarians, some of which are up here, some are back here. One's over there. I think they're all accounted for. Again, This creates troops in all kind of stupid places, but these were places the French had them too. It's only a 50-50 chance that any time a country surrenders, you get their troops. But when they swing back and forth like this, it's kind of fucking weird. That's going to put me onto, I guess, the Allied side of the turn. If I can find where that is, and yeah, I guess I'm kind of short of breath just talking when it comes down to it, which sucks. But this was actually a pretty powerful turn for the French. First of all, Spain is like pretty much done for. Maybe not next turn, but the turn after, Spain surrenders, and we got to turn around down here. That's about it. But it looks pretty obvious to me that the European powers are not going to be able to force France into a surrender. I'm going to have to make another look for the Poland roll. I guess I'm pretty sure I saw it, but I've lost the Polish cav this time. Anyway, this game, I looked at the Polish cav just to see if there was a difference. Nah, it's still a 1-star unit, which would make it the same as the gold print on the old game. This game has all miners have a 1 morale. You can make some serious arguments about that. Empires in Arms does a much better job, where some really shitty miners, or miners that maybe weren't involved in the war really, but wouldn't have likely had good troops, things like Algeria, have relatively weak morale ratings, whereas Poland, for example, has very good. It has the equivalent to the French, whereas the miners in Germany don't. They have a special rule on Portugal, where if they're trained long enough by the Brits, they end up upping to British morale instead of, I think, like they go from 2 morale to 4 morale, which is pretty good. And this allows you, with this kind of flexibility that EIA provides, it allows you to represent things a little bit more nuanced and more like they really were during the period, which is just interesting. There's also a larger span of morales, I think, because French and English morale is 4, something like Russian, I think Russians are only 3s, Austria, Prussia, they're 3s. English have the 4 morale infantry. The major powers have 3s, Turkey not so much, and then most of the miners are 2s, but some of them are 3s, some of them are 1s. It all depends. And then the guards have 5. It just gives a better spread and a little bit more national indication, and it's easy to play with because any units of that nationality will be organized in corps of that nationality for the miners, or will be gray units in the miners' home country. So it's very easy to tell who's what. You don't have this hunting down units. Now, it does mean that you also don't have the level of splitting up national forces, which you have here. It may be too much, but it's too little in Empires in Arms. There should be more capability to split up. Poland does have more than 1 corps, though, so that helps. I don't know. It is Wednesday night, and not really apropos of my being ill. I pretty much wasted the rest of the day just watching videos and whatnot, But anyway, here we are on the Allied turn. Time to play with boats. Too exciting, although we managed to consolidate all the British ships where the French ships are, where the French ship is, without causing any problems. And we actually brought some Russians out here. I'm using these little entrenchment markers to indicate these guys have their +1 because I don't have the little circle boxes on this map. Seems like a good option. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Something I like to do. If I can find the red dice. I'm going to roll the alliance phase, whether the English get that back before they take their attrition. I won't affect those units with attrition if they get placed back. But the reason is because, I don't know, it applies better to the camera or something like that. But that doesn't quite do it. And then we do the attrition roll for the allies, which should be just fine. I'll check, make sure that there's nobody with ridiculous amounts of units in them, but I think that's really unlikely. But there's really nothing I can do in Spain to defend it. And the stuff that's happening in Europe will not be sufficient to divert, to break up the Spanish, to force me to pull out of Spain, as it were, would be really the only thing at this point. And I'd have to pull out en masse, and it would take months to get there, and I just don't see the risk, even though there are a lot of Russian troops coming. There is still some reasonable possibility that the French could be hit back on their heels for their heavy devotion to Spain. But honestly, at this point, there wouldn't have been time for the French to pull back. They would have had to do it really in anticipation of the declaration of war. Okay, so we ran into some supply difficulties. I found that my forces here were no longer in supply. They may have been at one point. So the Austrians had to pull back. I didn't charge them for attrition for it. They probably wouldn't have suffered additional with that low roll. I did an overrun up here with Mack. He went and joined Brunswick after that on a forced march. But he's out of supply, which means that Mack's troops are only counted at half, but I'm still going to try to launch an attack against Soule up there because Soule's force is demoralized. I don't think it's zero morale because he's got guards, like a large quantity of guards. Looks to me like I'm attacking Posen. I didn't have enough movement points, I guess, to overrun it. I'm not sure. To have the movement points to overrun, you have to have the movement points to leave the hex. And that's what would have happened. So we would have ended up in this kind of situation anyway. Russians have a good supply line moving forward. The Austrians have reestablished their supply line going back. I don't know if I'm going to attack Massena here. Some of the weirdness that you have to do in this game. So Hiller was back here. He moved troops to Charles, dropped them off, ran up to here to Prague, relieving John, who then marches up to Dresden. Like, in a month, the leaders should be able to rearrange a lot more quickly than they're able to in this game. That 10 hex movement, whatever, is just not reasonable. But it causes goofy stuff to happen. Like, there's no way that John would be relieved by Hiller so that he could run up and take over at Dresden. That kind of thing just didn't happen, right? Yeah, it's a close enough area. Hiller would have just been assigned the new command or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't make much difference, but it does show some of the kind of mechanical fiddliness that doesn't really reflect reality to any degree. Not going to attack here from the river into there. I'm having trouble getting a grip over here. I figure once the Russians start making it over, it gets a lot easier. But I'm hoping to get a breakthrough here so I can start marching through in the north. And so Posen fell fairly easily, obviously. This got upgraded. Actually, I sieged it. I think I rolled a 1. I didn't try to storm it. And here I also didn't try to storm. I'm leaving Mac behind so I can try to get him in supply. Put an out of supply marker on there. doesn't matter until the Austrian turn, really, but it's a reminder to some extent, at least. And we're sieging Soule up here. He decided not to take the fight. He actually has 2 regular infantry, 2 guard infantry. He can't commit the guard because he's not Napoleon, so the regular infantry are the worst quality troops there. So they were in charge, and I would have been facing a fight with a 0 morale. That's not good. So I fell back in the city where I don't get faced with that. We fall to July. That's probably it for today. I'm not feeling too hot. I think you can hear it in my voice, but and tomorrow I don't know what's going on. I might be going shopping if I can, just a backpack, the light backpack, and grab some stuff for illness. I don't know. Actually, before I go down, I started halfway down. I sort of a personal thought about this, which is, when I was working, paying for the internet, well, work did it to begin with, so no biggie there. And then eventually it was like, well, work stopped paying for my internet for some reason, because they got all into cost-cutting measures and being a little less happy about people working from home and everything. But no big deal. But now that I'm paying it myself, I kind of have the feeling, even though, it's a heavy cost. It really is. It's like over $100 a month. But it's sort of insignificant to me at this point. I'm not going to live long enough to run out of my money, not with the kind of life I have and whatever. But it almost feels to me like I have to be on the computer all the time to make up for that. Once upon a time, it was a requirement for my job, so I needed to have the internet in order to make the money that I make, so, whatever. And now, though, it doesn't hold that kind of position. And I kind of feel like whenever I'm away from it, I'm like losing money for it. That's one reason why things like cable TV didn't make sense to me. You could make the same kind of argument about like renting a house, or an apartment or something, is like, oh, I really ought to be spending the maximum amount of time that I can in there to make the most money that I can off, to spend the least per hour or whatever. It's that kind of thinking, which I don't know if it really makes sense, but that's how my cheapness kind of works. Is like anything where I'm paying sort of a regular cost for something, I had better be getting every single damn cent that I can out of that cost, even if it means I give up things that I'd rather be doing. I think that's actually a factor in a lot of what I live in. Here I am up here relatively late Thursday night. Haven't been getting a lot of play and did another video on something else where you can see just how aged I've become. But somewhat in the, hey, I should really like come up and play some, but also I need to try to set it up so I don't go dancing tomorrow. I caught myself, sick as I am, whatever, still like, oh, I really do have to go. There's just, it's like I have no control over breaking such a habit. So what month are we in? We're in July. I'm assuming that's all good weather. Yeah, next is as well. So let's play with the French boats, which are beginning to really run their way down. With all this war going on, wow, I got a lot of captured Spaniards. I really ought to compact those, but a lot of them are militia and whatnot. I have a lot of dead boats, a whole lot of dead boats. And even though the English can't rebuild boats, can't even repair their boats anymore, and commerce rating was looking like it was kind of pushing them close to the edge. You know, it came down to, hey, do you want to keep France in survival mode, or do you want to, you know, try to push England over and keep France in survival mode and take out Spain? Because France could probably handle this situation okay if the Grande Armée was over here, but eventually Spain's going to come in against them. Anyway, let's go. It's impossible for me to get any successes in the commerce rating situation at this point. I'm continuing on because if the longer I can keep the Lloyds of London fucked up, the better it is. Actually, I forgot to do anybody on the continent. Oops. I did roll the attrition roll, and it's going to be somewhat problematic. Additional with the Naval, nobody managed to break out. It was very painful. Because I'm in combat positioning, I've got a lot of units in that 6 to 10 range, and a 5 meant that I should have had the -1. Fuck, I think I not in Spain. It's hard to keep track of. Who might have lost something? Messina definitely should get a cav back. Trying to see if anyone else was in a bad position. There's Messina. I took a French cav instead of a Polish. I don't know if anyone else took the heavier losses who was on the French side. There aren't a lot of leaders back here right now. Ney might have. Yeah, Ney probably is owed an infantry back. I don't know. Did Jerome have? I don't think he got hit. Just looking around. But anyway, I got a good production, which means I'll be able to rebuild that cav unit and regular units as well. I want to keep a decent amount of cav. They're very valuable in combat. If you have the cav advantage, both for pursuit, another 5,000 men lost when you win a battle, and for the modifier bonus. I really like that they have some effect. They don't under the base rules. Make my move in Spain, Eugene coming down, I decided to invade Portugal because Lisbon is important to some of the victory conditions. And if I can take Portugal out, it gives me an extra troop. That's not that important. But what's really interesting is Portugal gets 6 extra militia and 3 extra partisans when it's invaded. But you know what? Spain being invaded and owning Portugal means that the entire militia and partisan countermix is already used up. I don't have them. Which means that basically, unless the English are controlling Portugal, it's just not going to happen. So I'm actually not paying a price that I thought I was going to pay if I invaded Portugal. I feel like I'm in a strong enough position that I can launch this attack at this point because I kind of want to conquer Portugal before I let Spain fall. Actually, a really major penalty for the Spaniards owning Portugal. But remember, this was something the French were able to make them do, right? Which is that now they're on city points. They would get a production, if they were a normal miner, of just like, and infantry, or maybe 2 infantry a turn. But now they don't get a die roll, and because I captured a couple of cities, they're down to 3 city points. That means that they can produce enough points to make nothing. They cannot produce any more troops to defend themselves. So they're significantly weaker than they were funneling troops into Spain. I worked my way through, and the Spanish situation, we've knocked them down to 3 city points as well, so they can't build anything either. It's over in Spain. It's just a matter of trying to time it so that I get all of Portugal before Spain falls. As I move over here, I notice Messina, and I forgot something about him, that he's out of supply. I should have had an out of supply marker on him. So that cav that he lost, he actually would have lost. I'm keeping the same production I had, which was without that cav, which means I've got, more infantry, less cav, but I'm okay with that balance. I really wish I could get more forces up here, but I don't have a leader up there yet. I've got to get somebody up into that region so I can start funneling stuff against the Prussians. Some of my countries, like Prussia, haven't deployed all their leaders yet, but France, unfortunately, needed all their leaders for the Spanish expedition. Should we call it an excursion, or perhaps a picnic? With all the effort that we've put in play, and this is now supply yet? No, maybe probably not. 1, 2, 3, 4, not yet. Okay. With all that effort I've put into play, I got to be careful here because if I advance, I'm out of supply. We've got a couple of battles. Napoleon going against Cuesta with whatever Cuesta has of the Portuguese, and then I'm going to try a double doinker attack over here on Charles, and that's it. So things over here, this was just a complete wipeout. But only two, not one. Gotta remember the pursuit loss. Only 2 hits, didn't wipe them out completely. But anyway, here we had a failure of Messina to get that double doinker move in, and so Murat had to attack Charles on his own. Charles had a larger force, not quite 3-2, but the die roll is very bad for being the smaller force. We've got a D3. We kind of want to keep fighting, because to do otherwise, we'd have to give up our entrenchment, which is, I guess, of some value. We can actually entrench Ney there, too. He was in place. Let's do that as well. But in either case, what we're doing is we're going to stick around. There's a possibility that Murat surrenders forces, but the better chance is that we can pull additional forces in. So we'll roll for Ney at +1, who's coming in, and Messina at +2, who is not. Does Ney have enough troops? Well, he has Joseph with him. He has 7, 8 additional troops, which is more than Murat has now. So Murat loses all his demoralizations, and we have another crack at at beating up Charles here. Now, Charles still has the cav advantage, which is one of the few things he has going for him. Now, we're on the second round. Charles actually inflicted damage, again, better on Ney and Murat, but here's the problem. Messina is likely to come in. I'm not at great odds. Yeah, I still have a couple of cav. I'm in the same position I was in for the last round of battle, except maybe Messina comes in. I'm going to just fall back here into the mountains rather than fight what's likely to be a slightly superior force. And again, that's how this system works. We had a total loss. Let's see, a 7 at D3 was 3. That was a big hit, 15,000 men. Another 5,000. So we had like 20,000 to 5,000. I don't know. This could have been a climactic battle that just keeps going. Right? And, it doesn't necessarily mean a single battle, right? That's one of the things. Multiple rounds of battles, because of the scale of the hexes and everything, like in Empires in Arms with its areas, the multiple rounds might be happening, with a lot of positioning and everything going on. So the game doesn't really have that feel of, I have a battle going on, the way that like the Zucker operational games have with a singular battle. So it's kind of hard to, picture the whole thing the same way. Anyway, we're going to pause there. Fuck. I knocked something unimportant off the board. And go to the anti-French player segment. I obviously need a break between, even though if I was healthy and everything, I wouldn't. I came back up because I decided to go look up losses at Austerlitz. The French lost less than 10,000 at Austerlitz. The Allied armies lost around 35,000. When we're looking at something where it's like 20,000 to 5,000, this was a pretty big victory for Charles. On the scale of an Austerlitz for him, what he succeeded in. So maybe I'm too harsh about the decisiveness of the battles. One of the problems that comes about is kind of that it's sort of ambiguous how big a battle actually is. Is it a single, was this like a couple of days of battle? Feels like it was. Or is it a whole campaign, that's happening there? In which case, with one major battle, either one feels like it's believable. I'm not sure why, I don't know. It's certainly possible to have a big enough battle that is decisive enough, especially with the not recuperating from demoralizations, that it determines the war. And the casualty numbers, they don't seem that terrible when you actually multiply them out and think about it. 20,000 to 5,000. It's a fairly big battle if it was a singular battle. It's probably more of a campaign, but maybe one with like a couple of important days of battle going on in it. So I'm starting to warm a little bit more to the combat system. And again, those who complain about it feeling like World War I don't quite see it. The thing that that doesn't hit for me is that, or that I've had trouble grasping, is that are we having big decisive battles that are deciding the war? Or at least, forcing me to fall back, etc. And maybe, I don't know, the number, like the size of the armies, they don't feel like they're taking the same proportions of losses, I think is maybe the issue. But again, I may just be fooling myself. I don't know. Right back up here, forcing my way through the finish of this July turn, which is the Allied side. Navies, we didn't catch the French. Put these guys out so that they're more likely to catch the Danes. But the shipping, the Lloyd's table or whatever, is down to 20% now. And it doesn't change anything yet, but it's right at the edge of it. And I guess we'll roll an attrition roll. Let's pick a Prussian die for some reason. Oh, that was a bad choice. Yeah, that attrition, even in good weather, was pretty nasty with the kind of numbers we have on the field. And then for production, only the Russians get a bonus production. Interesting, in the original game, the Prussians got less, they got 2 landwehr each year, whereas the Austrians get 5 landwehr and an extra cav each year after they're conquered. Now, and they both get 10 landwehr to begin with. Now, under these rules, the Prussians get 2 landwehr a turn, and the Austrians get 1. But it's obvious the Austrians had more landwehr production in the original, but the countermixes for the originals give the Prussians more landwehr, which may indicate that like later scenarios gave more landwehr to the Prussians, and that there was just something obviously wrong with the production that showed up. I don't know. Anyway, let's start building units, I guess. Forgot the possible British end of the U.S. war. Yeah, not this time. Put my troops down. Now it's time to move them. There's really nothing I can do in Spain. This is more complicated, but there's, until the Russian army comes up against the French, which it's not going to be yet, there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do to really drive the French back. The Russians have the hard job of maintaining a supply line going back to Brest-Litovsk. If they get a minor in Germany, like say Saxony or something, but of course that's Austrian now, but if they manage to capture a minor in Germany, not only do they produce Cossacks there, but that becomes a supply source. And that becomes a huge factor where they don't have to, have their whole army stretched out all the way to Paris, basically, if they're going to take Paris. So the net Allied forces, we're going to launch an attack here, try to take out Westphalia. I forgot that I would have conquered Brunswick already, so I took the production from that and scooped that up. We got Mack coming down to join the rest of the Austrian army, so I don't have to supply it up there with Russians moving up in that direction. This is the most potential for taking Paris right now, but it probably won't be able to do it. And then I'm also launching an attack from Charles against the fortifications, the entrenchments, whatever, that I've put in place. And again, I've got some Russians backing the Austrians up, but for the most part, most of the Russian army is heading up towards the north because that's their best chance of kind of getting a victory or whatever. Where the original game had kind of clean victory conditions, which felt very much like, they could generate non-French nations performing what were really kind of ahistorical diplomatic positionings. Like it or not, that's what Empires in Arms does very, very heavily. Where basically all countries are in a free-for-all, although the victory conditions are of a little different nature. Here they're very clean and clear-cut. But honestly, if you play with the Empires in Arms with the dominant powers rules, there are almost always reasons for nations to act ahistorically to try to achieve that level of dominance during the Napoleonic Wars, which makes it sort of more of a fantasy scenario. This one feels like it's trying, under the new rules for War and Peace, the OSS edition, whatever. It feels like it's trying very hard to be, to keep you more to that historical standard. But what that ends up feeling like is kind of like playing the old Third Reich multiplayer, which is like, we're all just really trying to knock Germany and Italy down, right? That's what we're trying to do. And it feels kind of goofy to assess the different victory conditions within like an Allied victory. It makes a lot of sense to like argue between, how the Soviets do and how the Western Allies do. But when you're looking at like, how many turns did France last as their victory condition? That feels pretty fucking weak. And the amount of complexity in these leads me to kind of the same sort of, we're all just on the same side sort of feeling, as opposed to this real multiplayer game, which then leads you to what I often thought about with the old War and Peace, which was maybe it's just more of a two-player game when it comes down to it, like Third Reich is. Look, I don't think WIF has World in Flames has individual victory conditions for the different nations. I'm not positive. Certainly under the days of decision, I think there's a way of evaluating between the Soviets and the Brits. But it's a perfectly fine game for everybody to be playing their own power. You just do what you can on the front that you're on, which may actually be more historically accurate. The idea of like, oh, who managed to capture Paris and get the glory for that, being the person who wins, which I think is what it kind of might come down to, is I can't hold the victory conditions in my head for this one because they're so complex, but it feels kind of arbitrary, I don't know. Anyway, let's get my battles out of the way. Up here, I'm going to resolve as a siege, but down here, Charles attacked. Got kind of a moderate, trade-off, 1 strength point each. Now comes the question of bringing reinforcements in. I can try to bring Ney in as the French, and that might actually make sense. Ney has a decent amount of forces. I don't know why Joseph's sitting there, why he didn't move on. He has a decent amount of forces, and this entrenchment has changed the nature of things. Like, I would normally give ground, but those entrenchments are important. And I've also knocked out Charles's last cav. So I think I'm gonna keep trying to fight. I will eventually be able to bring Messina in. I could bring reinforcements from here. Those don't really hurt me to try to bring in, all kind of stuff. So I think we're gonna fight another round and go for it. Amusingly, nobody got added into it. So we're gonna still have that really kind of overpowered Charles hitting Murat. Might actually be at the 4-1 at this point. It's become more problematic. Ney has joined, but Hiller did not, so Ney has to move down there. He may leave some of his forces behind. He has to leave 3 behind for the entrenchment to work. I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to win the battle if I can. Knocking Charles out would be a big deal. The situation, the Austrians are going to choose not to attack, which puts me in an interesting position. Do the French want to attack at even against Charles? Now I'm not going to be able to bring Messina in, so I think I'm just going to call the battle off and leave it there. Because a 1-to-1 doesn't seem appealing to me. But it would be a 1-to-1 at -1 for Charles to attack. So I got some leader loss checks to make. Ney didn't actually fight, he just moved in. So that's all the checks I need to make. And now I've got sieges. Cow finally fell. Castle fell relatively easily on its first roll. That destroys Westphalia, so they're flipped over now and brings Hesse back into play. So I can build the 1 Hessian strength point that I have. This is going to allow the Brits to build King's German Legion if they get money again. This is the first time. There was a brief period where they could have built them because of Prussian involvement. I don't know where they build them. I know they need to own Hanover or Hesse, but I don't know if they get built in those locations or if they get built back in London. I guess that's something for me to look up. Anyway, we're moving into August. I mean, exciting stuff is happening here, all told. And I'm beginning to get more of that feel that I had hoped to get, that this was more of a tactically engaging game than Empires in Arms was. I don't know if it's as much as I had wished for. You know, this little thing gave me far too much feeling that, like, oh, there's a lot more to the game than I thought there was. I remember when it was first, posted online or whatever, long before this printing. And I was definitely thinking, that's interesting. I don't remember that kind of flexibility and everything. Yeah, it's playing out how I remember it. You consolidate your forces, maybe not too much, so that you do try to take advantage of the roll for reinforcements and stuff, because the attrition losses are heavier than battle losses if you make too big a stack. But it does open up some interesting options. It feels a lot better than the Nations in Arms did, even if maybe it's still very abstracted and feels like, the level at which these battles are happening is about the same as the level at which they happen in Empires in Arms. One of these pretty days, it's a Friday. I, again, couldn't convince myself to go shopping. It would just be small shopping because I need to get my cart fixed or the new one delivered, but whatever. I need to get my wheel cut, and I may do a little bit more of that today. I did some, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. It's fatiguing because it takes a fair amount of arm strength, and I'm pretty weak right now. Fighting as hard as I can to be awake all day so that there's no way I go out tonight. But anyway, here we are in August. Weather's automatically good. Time to play with the French boats. Well, the French have to fight their way out of Roquefort, and they get lucky. They drive the Brits back, but I don't want to go blockade them. I don't have enough ships in Europe to do anything, and I don't want to challenge, Nelson coming out there. Up there, I actually got a success in the North Atlantic, which is one of the few places that I have any chance of anything. So we drove the percentages up. That's going to put us on attrition. Let's see how ugly it's going to look. It's probably going to be pretty damn safe. It really is. I had a stack of 13 here, which a 2 would normally hit, but the French bonus takes it out. And that was safe. So I guess production die roll. Let's see what it gets. Nothing exciting. So a few little battles that I declared. I got Joseph down here. I don't want to pull him out. He's only got one Neapolitan unit. He's just a troop shuttler, really. He's a 0-pointer. So, but other leaders moving forward, this guy took command of the forces that I built this turn. Probably going to move up to Holland and try to relieve Soule, if Soule survives long enough. But the interesting stuff, first of all, Napoleon hitting Lisbon. I got enough forces I can probably storm it and take it. That means I'm going to declare this attack against La Romana. There would be a danger if I had to siege both of them, because if Spain fell before Portugal, I wouldn't get Portugal. So I got to make sure that I take Portugal. Whoever's down here, Naval, is not able to, he's not able to storm. But there's a chance on a 1 in 6 that he takes the city. So I got to make sure that if I am going to siege, I was able to make this attack successfully. Up here, I'm going to attempt to double Doinker again. I got a huge stack here. I got a pretty big stack here, ready to reinforce. Hiller really can't stand up to this fight, but that's okay. And this should probably be entrenched or something, but it's so little on my mind, right? Because I think he was there before, but I'm not positive. Plus, there might be a city there, but I don't think there is. And so, we're poised to keep fighting here, trying to reduce the threat that the European powers present while we finish off Spain. Spain should be done by now. Well, maybe not this turn, because again, we have to wait on that siege. I was able to get everything in supply here. Oh, I forgot to move him. Let's get him out of there. There we go. He's just moving up again to shuttle troops. One thing is, I put a lot of good leaders, including Napoleon, into Spain. Was that necessary? Probably not. But it's who was available and able to get there and whatnot. And it was kind of, I got to get a lot of leaders down there, so a lot of the good leaders are down there. A lot of these games are lacking the guy who actually was successful in Spain. He didn't win Spain, but one of the French marshals was exceedingly good in Spain, which is Suchet. And he is in very few of the games. He is actually in Nations in Arms, if I recall correctly. That has more leaders to it. Not just because it digs into the revolutionary period. But anyway, I'm always kind of grumpy that he's not in it. I'm always kind of grumpy that McDonald's not in it. These are leaders who were better than some of the leaders who were placed in it, in the game. And you could definitely argue that they had corps command at the least, which feels like it's kind of the barrier here. We people like Bernadotte, who I don't think is badly rated, are in here. Bernadotte, he was pretty important. I don't know. I'm trying to think who's not important. It's hard to make a choice. Jerome might be pretty iffy. It's hard to make a choice of anybody to push out. But like Joseph with his 0, why even put him in, except that he certainly was in command in Spain, but very seldomly in command of an army. So, he becomes kind of an iffy choice, but whatever. Some of it, I'm sure, has to do with balance, etc. Anyway, let's do those battles. I'm more talky than I should be. It's because I've had no contact with humans other than the video since, I don't know, 2 weeks ago now. And that 2 weeks ago was my drunken Friday. So I'm a little lonelier than usual. Plus, I've been so out of it for so long that I haven't been on video very much even. So there you go. And to begin with, the first round of combat, Napoleon destroys Cuesta. I got kind of a complex situation that I'm not going to pay too much attention to because I know Spain's going to fall. They have no capability to build troops. So I'm not too worried about the Portuguese militia, which they are, which they aren't. In this particular situation, I had some assigned here, but there's, looking at the British forces, which should be tracking this, 7, 8 Portuguese forces. And I only had like 3 that I could account for very easily. A couple here, 1 there. I pulled the rest out of here instead of out of here. I guess I could just have claimed all the militia that have been captured or Portuguese or something like that. But again, it's just not going to matter. Spain's going to fall relatively soon. They have no more cities, essentially. They're in Cadiz, but they can't build there because it's under siege, and all their other cities have been captured, so I get no capability for partisans or anything like that. So it's just a matter of time, and it might be a matter of time until Napoleon makes his way down with enough troops, although it isn't a hell of a lot to finish off La Romana there. So I put my 1 point of Portuguese infantry there. This is a big deal. I actually, this shifts the Western miners into my camp. So now I've got 5 of these facing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at even. So neither side would be getting a bonus on die rolls if there were die rolls to be made. No. There's kind of feeling that, I could have probably been trying to get Denmark out if I had realized I was a point up. And likewise, Sweden. I don't know what's up with Sweden. Denmark begins as a neutral. Only the pro-French is allowed to roll for Denmark. Okay. So once Denmark joins you, it just becomes a normal minor. Sweden, I don't know how Sweden enters the war. Like, I don't know if there's a way to bring Sweden. Sweden historically wasn't conquered and forced to be part of the coalition. Historically, they joined one of the later coalitions. And I don't see anything in the new rules that allows for that. And I feel like they should. So it may be that you actually have to fully conquer Sweden to get them into the war in the Grand Campaign, which is how the old game was too. It is not how Empires in Arms works, but it more or less is. So I guess I just kind of write it off that no game gets Sweden right. I don't know. Marat did not get the double doink on Hiller. And here I'm going to point out where these rivers in the middle of the hexes just don't work with this system in particular. So Marat gets to attack Hiller. Hiller doesn't get to defend along the river line because he's on the wrong side of it. You're always on the wrong side of it. Remember that. So Marat's going to be able to attack him with no defensive bonus there. If Hiller ends up counterattacking Marat, though, he first moves back across the river to get the penalty in order to do so. Now, you can do some hand-wavy stuff and say, okay, well, Marat lost the battle and is demoralized and everything, but he pushed Hiller back or something like that. But look, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. If the river line separated them and both had to pay to make the attack, that makes more sense. And it is the problem with this map. Rivers in the center of hexes just do not work in any games I've seen. I know some people have made arguments about them. But anyway, let me count my forces and see what Marat can do. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I had an extra leader I didn't need with Marat. I'm going to move Ney here to give me a better reinforcement chance. Again, it's cheating, but I don't give a shit. It's like I have so much trouble keeping track of, the piles that are going on in this game that I'm just like, yeah, I should have that little bonus. That was just a quickie. There's no reason Hiller wants to stick around and fight. He took a D1. There's no cav. Anyway, Marat advanced, but I leave Jerome back there holding the entrenchment. At some point or another, I can put it this turn. Massena's entrenched by now. This I don't think is. And that's going to push me over to the Allied or coalition side. But I'm going to try to cut some rubber. It turns out I was good. I didn't go dancing. It's, probably just kind of getting into the heavy swing of things right now down there. But I didn't go dancing, and I managed to cut my tire so that I think my cart is pretty close to as good as it can get. I could go back and try to cut the other one down a little bit more. There's a little bit of rubbing, but it's not too bad. So let's move some Allied boats around. But I don't know what the English can do. I mean, nobody can save Spain, and this situation is going to turn around and get worse. There is the question of whether, and I still haven't resolved this, whether Poland and Westphalia come back. We get out of the American War, and we get a terrible, terrible attrition check. On the other hand, we get a ridiculously kick-ass role for the production, so everything's doubled. A lot of shitload of interest for the Allied forces. I should stop twiddling counters. And pulled back with the Austrians, joining up with Barclay. Got some Russians advancing to support me, but the majority of the Russians I'm flowing this way. I want to get control, like I said, of something in Germany. Not just for the supply situation, but if I do end up winning, like if the Allies do end up winning, there's at least one victory condition that works like the old game did, which is however many production cities you own. So there's value to me taking stuff like the Empire here, maybe Stuttgart. And there's real value to me swinging down this way, getting some of those miners, strip them away from the French, and get more Cossack production, although obviously there's some kind of limit to the amount of Cossacks I have. They're not like militia or landwehr in the countries that have them. The only thing that's going on is this, which does fall. Opens up a couple of interesting things. One, it gives me Hanover, which doesn't have any troops of its own, but the Prussians get landwehr there, and I assume the Austrians can too. Russians, I guess, can get Cossack, Spanish can get militia, English can get militia, whatever. But that was the most important. I took a couple of Imperial Guard out of the way, and I took Soule out of the equation. That's a big deal. Taking away a level 2 leader is always a good thing. Problem is, anything that Prussia or Austria is holding, that's not going to be gone for the game. Anything Russia's holding is probably gone for good, unless somehow I manage to take Russia out. So that's the end of August. I'm basically well enough to try to make up for some lost time, or at least get back into the swing of things, which probably means I could have gone dancing, but whatever. Let's take a look at the weather. This is September. There is a chance of something yucky. But we get good weather across the board. And no one's neutral yet. Spain's still in the game. So I guess it's boats for the French. Attrition roll that's going to cost us something. No, nothing happened with the boats. We get an attrition roll that's definitely going to cost us something. So the French still continuing my siege here at Cadiz and bringing potential reinforcements in case I want to make it an assault. Pulling out of Portugal for the most part. This guy can get out too. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's in Spain, so he needs to roll. Trying to flow what little I can, the stuff that I don't need for supplies, out of Spain. I got a couple of leaders here I got to move to, I forgot about. But actually I may want them, at least the shuttle guy, closer to Spain. Moving some forces up to face Blucher in Holland. It's not optimal, but it's probably enough to scare him away. And we're going to try a double doinker attack over here. Let's take a look at that double doink. Oh, yeah. I want to make sure that I want to attack Ferdinand. Because, he's not very big. Yeah, I'll definitely go for him. Let's do the siege first, because that could just be over. It is not. Even though that's out of turn, but it's so far away, I just want to get it out of mind. And then we go for the double doinker here, trying to bring Messina over here. And he comes in, and they're probably going to light up Ferdinand pretty hard there, in the sense that, like, Charles and Barclay aren't going to get a chance to help. And that's that. That's going to put it over to the Allied turn. I'm going to break again. If things weren't kind of hairy here, I would push through, because, again, I am feeling a little better. But it's not time yet. Here it is, Sunday morning. Not feeling too great. I haven't been feeling good all Saturday. But I did push myself to go out for a walk, about 3 hours. Kind of hunting down a protest, but failed to find it. But had a nice walk anyway. Very pretty day. I just could have gone shopping. I did get my new cart. I haven't unboxed it yet. Kind of afraid to, because I think it's not going to be very sturdy. But I'm trying to convince myself. Well, I'm going to try to play the Allied side of the turn. It's a little ugly, but I don't really think that the Allies want to launch attacks, so at least there's that. Let's get on with the British fleets. So that was a little interesting. I still haven't spent my points. But I ended up finding, I sent Nelson out to do it. Which means that this fleet out here is no longer in the +1 zone, but that's fine. Ended up finding, but getting beaten by, at 4-1 odds, by the way, in my favor, the French fleet. Now, the problem is, the French don't really have an easy way of repairing that fleet. Unlike the English, who have no way of repairing anything because they have no points right now. I have to slip my way back into a French port, and I'm not given that option on winning a battle. And I lost the battle, I would have been given the option. So now I am going to have to try to run the fleets here in the Atlantic to slip into the Med and try to get into a position where I can repair. Well, let me see if I improve anything. I don't, so I'm not going to worry too much what it is I was trying to improve out of all of these. And then this goes down 3, I guess. It's at 0. We make it down into the 19, which is different. I'm no longer at the 20. Now, this doesn't affect me this turn. But, let me see. But this is, I get 1 point per thing, and I'm no longer forced. I'm only forced to to react in one of the 3 ways. So I'm not forced to put my money and all my fleets out there. The problem, of course, is I did take a fleet damage off of that and whatever. But I think we're kind of winning. I think we've kind of come to the point where the commerce war is almost over. Actually, with that percentage down, still can't roll a die. I still had to commit my points to here. So yeah, nothing there. I don't get the American forces back. And again, out of order, but I'll roll my attrition. And that's probably going to cause some damage. I hate the supply system here. Somehow or another, I ended up not leaving somebody here that I need to keep my supply line there. I'm just gonna fudge it and throw somebody back there because I've already done the attrition and everything. As I've done most of the turn, I mean, I moved my Prussians. I don't want to do this fucking tangle. I just don't want to do it. I'm feeling sick and feverish and everything. I was feeling feverish on the walk too. I did take some sleep. I've eaten a fair amount. I'm not getting as well as I should. But yeah, I got to push on now because I'm fucked into starting playing when I shouldn't have. Fizzled into a mainly defensive structure here as I advance on Frankfurt here, try to take the empire, make a Russian source of supply up here. Blucher, waiting for troops to come up. But here, I want to launch an attack against Murat. I don't know which stack's going to do it. Probably Barclay. But largely, this is just a big cluster that is all mutually supporting. And this could all turn into a big ugly brawl. He's a horrible choice because he's sitting on a river space, which means he is automatically on the wrong side of the river. First rather inconclusive round. A lot of lucky die rolls here. Actually, I haven't made checks for these guys. Basically, everything in here has joined in, but I got those two to check too. That one will not. That one will not. Yeah, but so it's these two against these four stacks, and it's all just added together in a single attack now. The fact that Barclay's behind the river, he's protected now. He's able, because the battle is coming from this direction. So, it fiddles around a little bit. It's possible that Barclay and Murat could end up separated in a fight somehow if, retreats happened or whatever. And then he would still be on the wrong side of the river, even though he's reinforced into the main battle already. That, by the way, still impacts the newer version of the game as well. That's not a matter of where the rivers are. That's just a matter of your and you can make arguments for it. Your supply line is not in good shape. Maybe you have to fall back. Again, these may not be individual battles. These may be campaigns. Something more on the line of the Zucker games. I'm thinking something like 1809. Or at least a slice of them. The strength points, it's 31 to 11. The morale, I'm not so sure about. Pretty sure the French morale is their white bordered units, the two morale. I think the Allied morale is probably a 1, but I can't be sure. I've got to look at all the different forces. And I've got guards in here and everything. I'm not doing an average or anything, so I don't have to, run a calculator through the whole thing like I would with Empires in Arms. But I've got so many different leaders and stacks, and some of these stacks have multiple leaders in them, So counting up what the distribution is kind of a pain in the ass. Round ended up being highly conclusive. I rolled the wrong dice the first time. I rolled Russian and Austrian dice, and I'm like, what the hell? I don't know which one's who. So I re-rolled it with Russian and French. The Russians, or the Allies, lost 2 strength points. Another 10,000 men, 15,000 men for the battle. Not insignificant. The French, in addition to the pursuit, lost a total of 30,000 men, 6 strength points, including the pursuit. And then if you include the first day of battle, that's 35,000 men. So 2 rounds of battle was absolutely significant. When you get, I mean, these are huge forces though, right? Like we're looking at, well, this was only 11, which is the determinant for how many losses you get. But, you know, when you're looking at 150,000 Allied forces versus like 50,000, you know, 55,000 French, yeah, that's a hell of a big battle. But more importantly, Massena is dead. Charles and Barclay are both wounded for 5 turns. These were like, that's highly unlikely you're going to get that much damage. Anyway, we're moving into October. There's no way I'm playing more tonight. I feel like shit. After my little war on the outdoors yesterday, I figure if Trump can use excursion for war, I can use war for a walk. I'm back up here. It's kind of later afternoon. Turning pretty enough. Tomorrow's supposed to be a nicer day. I'm hoping to go shopping tomorrow. Today I'm taking off just because I felt kind of crappy yesterday. We'll see. We'll see how things turn out. Anyway, we're here in a new month. And we got to do a weather check. Bro. I know it's taken me a long time to get through this game, but we get a 6. That's nasty weather. That's going to be wet everywhere except full winter in the Russian map. Wet just means things move slower, but that's a pain in the ass if the French are going to need to get out of here. Well, feels like we're at the end for the French naval adventures. Tried to slip back home, got intercepted, sunk the French ship, damaged the English, and an escape was attempted out of Denmark. The English managed to catch that, sink the Danish ship. The French are down to like 2 warships now. Honestly, I don't think I've checked them yet. So let's see if we can get them out, because we want to keep the English out of the war as long as possible. Very soon they're going to be coming back in if the merchant, if there's no raids in the merchant area, because they get like 6 back. Okay, nobody gets out. And beyond that, that's going to put me on the attrition check. Weather's okay. I mean, it's wet, but that's not an effect. It's going to be a big 0. Nobody's going to get hurt from that. A big production roll, and building the French up here. Trying to rebuild boats where I can, but not putting any focus on it anymore, because I think I've lost the naval war completely at this point. And that usually happens at a much earlier stage when you're not playing with the commerce rating. The commerce rating has allowed the French to do something else with their navies other than, I'm going to invade England. I guess another something else could be invading Ireland. I don't want to, like, the rules for that I have available to me online, but I don't want to deal with them. If I don't have them in front of me, then fuck you, OSS. Seriously. For putting out a product that didn't meet quality standards and then not even responding. All right, I'm trying to rush Napoleon back up, so he's dumped his troops off. Bessier is supposed to take control of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 there. Got to be kind of careful about my supply lines still. Again, just a hassle. I'm launching 1 attack. Marmont's gathered up a bunch of forces to take Blucher on. I don't know what the odds are. They're very much in France's favor, but and we'll see if we take Spain this turn. We do. So that's going to be the surrender of Spain as well. And there aren't too many implications with Spain being conquered. It becomes sort of a normal country now where it's going to be, well, first of all, it's not allowed to join either side for a year. But it's going to be accessible by the diplomacy rules, just like countries would in the two-player game. So it becomes sort of the one battleground for the diplomacy table that's left. Again, Sweden's not available on it for weird reasons that I don't understand. The only way to bring Sweden into the war is to go invade them, and which I've always despised about the original game. It was not the fact that the Russians attacked Finland is not the reason that Sweden joined the coalition. If anything, it probably, drove them further away, right? And yeah, whatever. But in terms of the victory conditions and whatnot, this puts France in a position where I want to keep garrisoning all the Spanish cities to hold the, and I own Portugal, so all their cities are already in my hands, to get me to the position where if I take Prussia out, I may well be at the victory condition. So I got to kind of pay attention to how many points of ports there would be on the new map, because the numbers don't quite match the old map, I think. Not positive about that, but I think things are a little different. Like there's more stuff in Sweden and stuff like that that could conceivably swing over. Of course, there's no way. This is kind of fucked up. The new map has something that makes sense, which is the ability of the Danes to cross over, which they really should have, and inject their troops, because these crossings are relatively small. Of course, that would be blockaded by the English forces being out at sea anyway. But there are land crossings on the new map, which I would kind of apply, except for the fact that they would be blocked anyway by the fleets at sea. Anything else? Yeah, I've got to do that number check, because it's like 30-something cities that have to be taken, and some of them are off map and can be assumed, like Naples, and can be assumed to be controlled by the French. But I don't really know what that numbering is going to look like and what I want to do with it. But an incursion in the north against Russia, I don't know if St. Petersburg needs to be taken. And the conquest of Spain opens up this sort of powerful opportunity. The only problem with Spain is the English can come in, take Portugal, and then can actually operate in Spain because it's a conquered country. So they could actually start harassing and causing issues. So I've got a timeline. I've got a timer on how, based on the commerce rating, on how long I can kind of try to go for that ultimate victory. That ultimate victory is a lot easier if I take England, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, we are going to break before we hit the Allied turn. The Allies still have an advantage over here in Central Europe, and obviously marching in this direction. Again, I don't think it's enough that they can push the victory into play. But I got to be careful. I got to defend against the Russians coming through, you know. But yeah, in terms of the break, I still feeling sort of dizzy in these other effects that are like similar, you know, that are similar to the fever and whatnot. They're just a general fatigue aspect. A week I feel now, you know, just it's been 3 weeks where I've done very, very little. Yeah, I went dancing one of those weeks, and yeah, I went for a walk yesterday. I think I went shopping within that, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. But anyway, I mean, my body just feels so weak. Anyway, took the Brits, played with their boats, with no French out in the, doing any kind of commerce trading. That drops the Brits down now to 11% on their Lloyd's of London thing, which means I still have to do stuff, but not much. And that means I get my money, which is going to be big. I'm going to build up my Navy. It's questionable how much else I get. I actually also get a die roll for production at this point. But first, we get to roll the attrition roll. And that might have some impact. Again, it's not winter anywhere except in Russia itself, and I don't think Bennigsen has a huge force. He might. Yeah, actually, he's going to take a loss. But, you know, across the board, there are some larger forces out there, so I think this is going to cause a few losses. Combat situations I have to look at. I got to decide if I want to hit here. I got Blucher and Brunswick, I think, there. Maybe. I don't know where Hohenlohe is. He seems to have gotten himself lost somewhere. Is he dead? Not up there. I don't know. Ruschel there. I don't know where Hohenlohe got himself to. Might be dead. Look at. So I seem to have lost one of my Prussian commanders, which isn't good. I actually need them. Maybe I'll find him. Oh, no, he's captured. Good enough. And Russians definitely going to push forward into the empire. I thought there was a third definite attack, but then I've got this little mess here that I need to figure out what I want to do with. I've got a lot of Austrian troops facing Murat, but I also have the possibility of hitting Jerome down here with Ferdinand, which all might be a good idea. And the coalition is relatively successful again. Here, I chose not to attack. I don't have great numbers. I want that defensive terrain bonus if they attack me. I didn't consolidate my forces. I entrenched for a reason, and I'm good with that. We captured Frankfurt, which sent the Rhine over. Or Rhineland over. It gives me some Cossacks in Barcelona for whatever that's worth. Otherwise, I had to hunt around. I actually had some of the Rhenish troops as Russian captives, so those have been returned as Cossacks into the force pool. Down here, Ferdinand drove, what's his name? Jerome, I think that's Jerome, back, and Mack ended up with a successful attack against Murat. Murat got wounded. He's out until January. I'm out of 0 leaders for the French. But I had 1 0 minor leader. Now, the only thing that he can replace that I'm aware of would be if Jerome got wounded or something. I'm just saying, fuck it, let me use him. This is mainly a minor force command anyway, so I'm just throwing it into play. In the new version, there would be tons and tons of unnamed leaders, many of which have a 1 rating, which again I think is just a mistake. But although it does make up for like the fact that people like McDonald and Suchet are not included in the game, it just goes against what I feel like was attempted to be described by the original game, and for reasons that I don't find sensible. So that's going to push us into November. The bad weather and whatnot is slowing down the capability of the coalition to really, put the hammer on while they have an advantage. However, it's going to be hard to get a lot of troops sliding out of Spain and up to the front. Now, I do continue to get my production and whatnot, and at least there's that. Anyway, it's breaky time. I went down and refreshed myself on how and why Sweden entered the Sixth Coalition, I guess, against France. A, Bernadotte was already in charge, a competent military leader, etc. Well, supposedly. B, they had lost the war to Russia and had lost Finland, but gained Norway during the interim. And C, Napoleon moved into Swedish Pomerania and captured it. Now, obviously, if capture of Swedish Pomerania is an issue, there were other reasons. D, they were forced into the continental system by the Russians, as outlined here. Maybe E, there was a grand coalition that involved all the other powers at that point. So here's what I'm going to do. Once Bernadotte's in charge, because my thinking was, I've got something kind of like the 1813 scenario happening here. Why shouldn't Sweden enter? Once Bernadotte's in charge, if all powers are allied against France, the alliance is allowed to roll on the diplomacy table for Sweden. There's no way Sweden would have entered the war in France's favor except to try to regain Finland, and the game really doesn't seem to allow for that. And that doesn't fit the kind of nature of the scripting that the game has. So I'm going to go with this. I think it's more applicable than what is written here, which just, the only way Sweden is going to enter this war is Russia invades them. And I'm like looking at that and just saying, hey, it's not worth the effort of losses. So it would never happen. And it's always been one of my gripes about the original War and Peace, and it seems to continue into this one. Given how much I've been tinkering, bringing rules in from the new, using the rules from the new version, then switching over to the old version map and all kind of stuff like that. Let me just make shit up for Sweden too. That feels like it fits better than what's here. And that may be one of the things. Many of my gripes may have to do with the 6th edition. It's possible the 7th edition is better in many ways. I know the map is still going to be huge. I could live with that, even though that's probably actually the biggest single gripe I have is the size of the map, that it required me, the making change and all that required a lot more work than I wanted to play around with. So, in a way, that is the worst thing about the new version, is that the map board is just too fucking big. But the counters, I've heard somebody say the counter mix is better, like the counter The ability to distinguish the minors is easier in the 7th edition. The rules, which are a fucking mess. Customer support, it's not OSS anymore, it's another company. One that maybe, one might trust. I don't know. Certainly never trust OSS again. That is for sure. Just have to grind that in. Have I had bad experiences with other companies? Yeah. But I've heard nothing good about OSS. Nobody's had anything nice to say about them. And, I remember when they kind of made their splash as a new company in BGG, and people were excited and everything. And I know there were people that were in favor of it and who seemed to like it. But my feeling is just, I haven't heard anything good from anyone while I'm doing this. So I'm assuming that the kind of people who watch my vids are kind of people who, at least to some extent, share my kind of feelings about shit. And it's just, I've written them off. I've written them off entirely. Also very much against doing Kickstarters, because my experience with Kickstarters has just been awful. Absolutely awful. I've had one good experience, the first one I did. And it wasn't great. It was delayed several months. But that's the life of things. But anything that I have to go through Kickstarter, fuck it. It's not worth it. I've got enough games. I've got enough games. If I run out and have to start hunting down new games and whatnot, we'll figure out our way there. But anyway, I wanted to come up and discuss that. Yeah, I looked into what's going on in Sweden, and I just don't feel like the game has ever represented that well. All right, back up here. Weather is cold across the board. Spain actually gets a turn, but they don't get any production because Madrid is under French control, although France has to leave it next turn. Guess that means I get to play with French boats for whatever that's worth. It's looking pretty iffy at this point. Lost a few points due to attrition. Their boats didn't do anything. A few points due to attrition, like 3 strength points. It was a middling number, but in winter that can be bad. And then get a normal production turn. Right, so now we're undertaking the long trek of the French Cav and other units, trying to get out of Spain. Don't want to get everything out. I want to hold cities because that's one of my potential victory conditions. And Napoleon trying to make his way back to Paris, maybe get an extra die roll, and then focus up here. Up here I'm going to do a double doink attack, trying to take that. Here we fall back a little bit. Not doing anything about the Russians yet, although we're going to have to concentrate on them pretty soon. Let's check that double doink. That's good enough. That means Marmont gets to run over here, but he's got to leave a strength point behind for supply consideration. And our one attack is a success. We beat Blucher with a D2. It's nice. Gets us to the anti-French. And again, I'm not in a state to push through, a full turn anymore. Okay, so the English are mostly relieved of their burden in the commerce situation. I do still have to keep some ships out there, and I did so. 6 off. We're down to 5%, which is the minimum. That's always going to be, it's never going to go below that. But we did get a nasty attrition roll, which is going to cause some damage. Not to the English, but to the Allied forces. Okay, now that it's an issue, rolled my production. By the way, that 5-point attrition was really bad because Prussians were outside their home country. Russians are essentially, they don't have a home country because the Russian map gives them a penalty. Add winter into that, and that 5 turned to a 6, which means even small forces, 3 to 5 units, took a loss. So quite a few strength points were lost. This is my production roll. It's nothing exciting. But I had to look up the King's German Legion, and I guess by extension the Landwehr. I believe what happens is the Brits can produce a strength point from either Hanover or Hesse in lieu of any other anti-French force doing that, and it's actually produced in the location. It's a better unit, and I have some British leaders, so I can actually create an English force down there. Oh, hey, I forgot to do the alliance check. Yeah, that's not going to do it. Just keep checking the U.S. I've been doing it even if I don't mention it. So the Prussians fell back on the Hesse-Hanover area here because Blucher was in trouble and whatnot. Austrians and Russians are consolidating to attack this little doinker here. I'm going to use Ferdinand here, try to bring Mac in. Mac's got, I don't know who, he's got one of the big guys there. He's got Kutuzov there, I think. Bagration cutting down this way. All I have to do is take Paris, but that's not necessarily that easy. There's like a weird distortion where like hexes are almost twice as big as they should be along the map creases, or not all of them. Some are smaller than others, but it is a problematic thing with the original game as well, which may be, I don't know what. But anyway, we've got just one battle that we're planning on, and a slow grind pushes us forward. It's the end of November. I had forgotten to move my French unit out of Madrid. Bessier could have come through and moved it by a strength point, I think. Could have moved the single strength point. That can be really problematic when you're garrisoning a capital if you don't have a means of moving out of it. Really should just be displaced. So the Spanish are going to get their reinforcements. We won't load this up until we finish the year or so, but I'm in no condition to do another turn. Here it is, Monday, and my usual, geez, I just don't feel up to it. Kept me from going shopping. And just as I started to convince myself to head up here, another realization. I noticed my printer, which I have to do something with for inheritance stuff. Hey, it's not a huge deal, but I put it off for a month so far. Has, just struck me. And then all the other shit that I'm putting off and whatnot hit me as well. And I don't know, maybe it impacts me and I do something, but chances are a lot more likely that I just leave everything to go to shit. Anyway, here we are in December, definitely a weather roll for that, although almost assuredly going to be cold across the board, which it is. Got that set already. Guess I get to play around with the Spaniards. That's why I had the yellow dice there. See what their production is. Nothing exciting. I mean, they only have one city, one production city, so they get an infantry. So long as they're neutral, the Brits get to control them, so they're just going to build the infantry. They're not going to, fiddle around with boats or anything like that. Speaking of boats, that puts me on the French boats, which are not in good shape now. Middling attrition caused us to lose a couple of strength points. Had to take a French strength point loss instead of a Dutch one, or Batavian, whatever, because all I had was a single deuce for the Holland forces, and I didn't have any, I only have 1-1 in here. I don't have anything over here. Again, this could be I'm missing some pieces, or maybe not. You know, I don't know. I know the new game, I ran into problems with the counter mix. I thought this one would fix it, but I forgot that, yeah, there were counter mix issues with the original. It's got, you know, too many counters for some minor nations that they can't possibly use, at least not in the Grand Campaign. Maybe they're used in some scenario, although I doubt it. And not enough for others, or not a reasonable distribution that allows you to put all their pieces on the board. The navies have the same issue, just kind of baked in the Grand Campaign as well. It just doesn't quite work for whatever reason. And I don't know why I have a couple extra transports back here with the English. That's another factor. They start with a couple transports, they never get any more. Maybe they're supposed to be able to get them instead of fleets. It's possible you could capture transports, I guess. Anyway, that puts me on the production roll, which is good. I'll pull out from Spain, continuing, leaving a couple of units out of command, or unsupplied. This one doesn't matter. It's as small as that. I'll just get rid of it. It doesn't make a difference. This one does. He will take an attrition hit. He could have possibly forced marched into supply, which is part of why he's there. And Napoleon didn't quite make it to Paris. I was hoping he had enough movement points. He's probably going to want to take command of something. Putting pressure here, across here, falling back over here. And we shall see whether I actually conduct those battles that I've indicated I'm interested in. It's not to attack Bagration here. I don't even think we should have advanced, but that's life. But up here, Marmont successfully, Blucher decided to fight a field battle so I wouldn't get him captured. And not at great odds, he took a T2, but much, much worse, he was killed. And that's Prussia's only good leader for the game. Austria, you know, I've got Charles here on the wounded chart, but at least they get Schwarzenberg. Russia has several 2-point leaders. Even little England has Wellington and more. Prussia has just been handed a pretty big blow with Blucher being gone. And that's going to put us to the anti-French turn. And again, I'm going to break. Not that things are all that intense, but I just never feel like I'm up for the whole battle, for a whole turn anymore. Something that hit me pretty hard in the big, you know, using the modern, you know, the newest board, was I was even breaking, you know, within a given player turn. The smaller board, when there wasn't much happening, I could run through the turns pretty easily. It's a much harder thing. You know, when I have to do all the lookups and figure out the battles and stuff like that, it's like, I don't really feel like doing that on the other side now as well. But the small board is definitely helping, even if it seems like maybe it isn't as much as it should. To finish the turn, and we got a real ugly attrition die roll. That's gonna hurt a lot. Assess the attrition. A couple of points came to my mind. Something else, but got nothing to do with the game. That was on my mind before I got up here. which has to do with futures markets and how they don't make sense to me for agriculture, but I gotta do some research on that. Okay, so the Russians took a Cossack loss, and I had a 2-point Cossack under Kutuzov, and didn't have, the capability to make the change that I want. And that's actually an important factor. The simple aspect that I add more Cossacks onto the board, or landwehr or whatever, for the nations that don't have dedicated troops for any given country. In most countries, the dedication is only one. For some strange reason, Sweden is special, and you always use the Swedish troops. But anyway, outside of that, and what that means is, like, Britain can't get navies out of Denmark. Only France can, and weird shit like that. The game just doesn't quite work if you start looking at it too carefully. But anyway, the fact that you use these these sort of low-grade unit countermixes, and the Cossacks are the worst because there are less of them, is very detrimental to the countermix issues. The other thing had to do with, I took losses from attrition and took a cav loss and a landwehr loss from the Austrians when Russians were present in the same hex, and could have taken some of the losses. But the Russian units are higher quality. And what that comes down to is a sort of, along with the troop production, a sort of a negotiation amongst the players as to who gets the right, who loses the units, who gets the right to get the units. I'm taking it largely on it's in Austria's best interest for the best troops to be there, and if those are Russians, those are Russians, and but that might not always be the case. And I don't think there's a fair mechanism for handling that covered in the game. I don't recall there being one. I guess you could dice off or stuff, but yeah, it's anyway. Let me get back to taking my attrition. Couple decent productions. Again, that probably means the Prussians will take the production in Germany this turn, just so they get 2 units. After movement, the coalition has one battle they want to undertake against Rome here, because he's demoralized still, and I can bring a lot of forces in. I'm really just playing sort of an attritional game at this point, because that, I'm not going to get the kind of great battle that, like, breaks open the front. I had to pull Bagration back because he's too threatened where he was, shifting the Russians forward. But, it's just the casualties from the battles are just kind of counting in with the casualties from attrition, in this hope of getting enough time to build up my forces so that the French can't wipe out the Triple Coalition too quickly. It's gonna fall, but anyway, painful process of working all the replacement, the reinforcement points into the force pools, and see if anything interesting, because we're going into 1809 now. Might have missed something. France must have invaded Spain before this date. I'm glad. England may lend to Russia. This is the Tilsit thing. Not really a big issue. Wellington's defensive line. Hey, didn't I try to do that? France can annex Holland. I don't know if there's any real value to that. This is actually the Tilsit I'm using. French invasion of Russia rule ends. They don't have to do it until 1813, though. Yeah, so I guess we'll just be playing with force rules. Into a couple of cases where there were not enough pieces. The Swiss, I think, didn't have any more units than they're supposed to gain, and someone else. Don't remember who else. Holland got away with it, even though their countermix is stressed. Württemberg. Yeah, all of Württemberg. And Württemberg's got a lot of pieces, a lot of one-point pieces and whatnot. I'm just saying, if the countermix doesn't support it, even if I lost pieces or whatever, fuck it for the most part. I know I didn't do that with Poland, but I just can't keep fishing units out to cover other stuff, and a minor country's infantry just isn't going to be that big a deal. So fuck them. And that is going to be it. That'll put us in January of 1809. I'm going to load this up. Yippee-ki-yay.